We'll call the meeting to order.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First item is the minutes of this committee's meeting of Monday, July 25th.
Move. Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Next item.
Second item is the delegation. I'd like to invite Mr. Ryan Beedie, Mr. David Roppel, and Mr. Todd Yuen to be representatives. I'm speaking on Fraser Mills update regarding Lot 1A.
1 for 1.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. So, the chair is yours.
Who's got the clicker?
I have the clicker, so just click that way forward.
Oh, that'd be the wrong one. Don't click this one.
No, not that one.
Don't click this one.
Aha. A sunset, yes.
Howie.
A sunset and all that. This is a sales job, isn't it, Ryan?
One of the way. Thank you for allowing us to be here today. I'm Ryan Beedie, as you know, president of Beedie Development Group. With me are David Roppel, director of Beedie Living, and Todd Yuen, president of Beedie Industrial. We're here to provide a brief update on Fraser Mills and to present information regarding the proposed text amendment for the entrance site at United in King Edward. As many of you know, Fraser Mills was zoned for mixed use in 2008. Overall market changes following zoning adoption resulted in high customer demand for sites connected to SkyTrain, which Fraser Mills doesn't have. This, combined with concerns we had over the original development plan, resulted in us questioning the economic viability of the project, and we've spoken with many of you over the years about that issue. We know many people are disappointed. Things haven't moved faster. We share this disappointment given we've significant investment not only in the property, but we've made a big contribution to the King Edward overpass and have invested millions of dollars in property taxes over the years. We spent the past 2 years working on a revised project model. We've had constructive conversations with staff, and we're working towards a modified development program for council's consideration. It's our intention to come forward to council in December outlining modifications to the development agreement, which would see Fraser Mills' residential component moving forward in 2017. The revised development agreement would have the same commitment to employment as per the original plan. And as you may know, we have 2 industrial buildings under construction in Fraser Mills right now. Our first tenant brings with them a good quantity of quality jobs from a neighboring municipality, and we're very encouraged with activity and demand for the remaining units in the building. So I'm pleased to hand things over to David Roppel, director of Beedie Living, who will share some additional thoughts.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Mr. Mayor, Council. Last week I walked the Fraser Mills site with the new development team and the consultant team, and all of us were again struck, people who had been there many times and people who were just seeing the site for the first time, about the multi-generational, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that Fraser Mills is. So we're very excited to be rebooting the planning process, and that reboot started last week and will continue tomorrow. We've hired the highly recognized architectural and urban design firm of Perkins & Will, which I think you may know their work, to help us in the revisiting of the Fraser Mills master plan, and that work will be led by Joyce Drohan, the planner at Perkins & Will. We feel very strongly that they're the right firm to help us revisit the Fraser Mills plan and bring it to a 2016 version. They'll be working from the strong foundational 2008 plan and building on that work. They've also done extensive work on waterfront communities, and their experience working in other important Coquitlam sites will very much benefit this process. So we're very fortunate and looking forward to have them, to work with them and have them guide the way. In addition, the landscape design firm of Perry & Associates have been rehired. They worked on the original 2008 plan, and they'll bring a depth of history and knowledge to the revisiting of the plan. All of which starts tomorrow with our first all-day workshop with the consultant team to look out the plan. They have all the documents to understand the things that need to be adjusted, amended, and revisited, many of which will be confirmed and will stay as part of the plan. Members of your staff will join that workshop, and then there'll be a follow-up all-day workshop on the 12th, on the Monday. So that's our mechanism to relaunch and reactivate this plan. A central part of our work over the next 3 months will be revising and confirming the area-wide and site-specific design guidelines, as well as the Heritage Interpretation Plan. A lot of work has been done on those two documents and will be, again, developed and enhanced for our resubmission. We'll be working with your staff fully involved as we move forward to a December 1st OCP amendment and rezoning amendment application. That's our goalpost, and that's our date that we have to deliver those applications on. Ryan mentioned the site employment opportunities that you see in the third bullet there. I'll move to the fourth bullet, which is the issue of public art. We'll continue to work with the comprehensive public art and heritage recognition program that has been started in 2008, and we'll confirm and revise that for 2016 and beyond. And then one of the important pieces will be the piece in front of the AG building that Todd will talk about in a moment, and that's at the intersection of United and King Ed. It's our goal to develop a comprehensive and coordinated approach to public art across the site that will work closely with your staff and the public art policy and, of course, council to have a unique and interesting historic and public art approach to Fraser Mills. I'll turn it over to Todd Yuen to speak to you more specifically about the AG building.
Thanks, Dave. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of council. As noted in the staff report, the proposed text amendment in front of you does ask you to consider a movement away from the multi-story office-centric development that was originally envisioned for Lot 1A. 8 years ago, it was hoped that Fraser Mills could support multi-storied office-style developments. However, the realities of the office market today have made this form of development unfortunately unviable. In this day and age, to have any chance of success, an office development needs to have immediate access to SkyTrain. Over the past 8 years, Beedie has attempted to secure the mandate of numerous types of office-type developments and users, but unfortunately we've been unsuccessful each and every time. This reality required a pivot on our part in order to attract uses that will not only be job-generating, but compatible with the high-quality, mixed-use environment we are looking to create at Fraser Mills. With that, it is my pleasure to introduce you to the proposed new worldwide headquarters for AG Hair. AG is a well-known hair and beauty product manufacturer and distributor currently located in 3 facilities throughout Burnaby. AG Hair represents what we would describe as new generation industrial. While AG's use absolutely does include a manufacturing and warehousing component to it, there are also R&D, marketing, sales, finance, HR, administration, and senior management functions which will be co-located in this building. AG Hair currently employs 80 people with an expectation this number will increase in the future, particularly if they're able to locate to a new facility that allows them to grow their business. As you can see from the rendering, it was as important to AG for their new facility to project an absolutely top-tier adherence to architectural design as it was to Beedie. We are entirely confident this building and AG's use will be an incredible gateway to Fraser Mills, and their use a perfect complement to the mixed-use community we are looking to create. As importantly, AG's job count proves in the light industrial realm, the job ratio objectives for Fraser Mills can be met while reducing density and in a manner wholly consistent with the original vision for Fraser Mills. Thank you for considering and supporting this text amendment.
Okay. Are there any questions from anyone on the presentation? Brent?
Well, thank you for your presentation, your information on this. I would say this will be our second revision of the original plan. We've already had one revision come to council and be approved by council previously, and we had no action on that revision at that time. So this will be the second revision that this council or Coquitlam Council will be seeing on this project. You say on there that you have no net loss of on-site employment. Originally, as Ryan remembers, I didn't support this project. The biggest thing that I've always said that it made me support this project because the loss of industrial lands was the job numbers. So when you say on-site, I look at the phrase, we were talking, I think it was, Mr. McIntyre can correct me, I think it was 1,500 jobs were proposed for this site for the commitment in the original plan. I think that's the number, if I'm not correct, to be corrected. And that's what I'd like to see the commitment to be, to that level of job numbers. That's what we need in there when we, so that you're going to commit to.
We have a slight discrepancy with on our number, I think, versus the city number, but our intention is to fulfill that obligation. There would be no change in the employment number in the new plan versus the old plan, to your point.
And I guess my other question would be then to what type of jobs are we looking at? When we looked at the industrial area, we were looking for, and technology and different things. I mean, I still think the waterfront area for tech companies, my son's in tech and he doesn't take buses. He makes enough money, way more than what I do in 2 jobs in tech and they drive. He was driving a Beamer for a while. He got rid of that. He's got something else. But so tech industry doesn't need to be to a SkyTrain. Electronic Arts in Burnaby has never been close to SkyTrain. That whole development in there has been close away from things. So, but my concern is if we're moving it throughout the site, are we moving it to minimum wage jobs, or are we making it for higher income jobs? That's what my other concern is. We talked about the jobs we were looking before, Ryan, when we first came about actual type of well-paying jobs in the community.
Councillor, I believe in the response to the staff report, AG actually wrote a fairly detailed letter breaking down on an individual piece-by-piece basis the types of jobs they're bringing to the table, the level of university experience required for each and every job. And if you look at that, I would say that we are being successful through the light industrial program to attract the high level of jobs you're looking for. Beyond that, a second tenancy that we've just secured out of Port Coquitlam is a very significant North American renowned baker. It's a bakery. He runs 24/7. So those aren't minimum wage jobs. These are very specialty items. They supply all the major hotels in the city. He's 80 employees. He's 7 days a week on multiple shifts. So those are by no means the types of individuals that you would pay minimum wage to. These are high skilled, high training, high wage jobs.
Well, that's something I just want to underscore when we look at the counts there.
Absolutely.
I still think I also, I'm concerned about we're placing the density on one area or parking it there for now. And how we access that density or how we do this. Because when you look at that density, I don't think that density would require a high rise to make it up in that one spot. So how we move that through will be interesting to see when you come forward with your further plan. I will say, though, we're looking at this revision, and I'm 8 years now since we approved the plan. We don't have residential built down there. But when I look across the water from Fraser Mills, I see Port Royal, which is not connected to a SkyTrain station, has poor bus service, has been developed, and has building high-rises on it right now. So the market's there. And I think we have better connectivity at this site for SkyTrain, close proximity, and transportation needs than what you do at Port Royal. And so those are my concerns right here. It's a nice-looking building, but my underscoring thing, and Mr. Beedie, you know that, is the jobs count. That's something I want to make sure that is fulfilled within this agreement. And I know years ago we were talking about a tech school down there and different stuff. I'd still like to see some of those things between us, the city or whatever, to create. I'd like to see, you got a waterfront area. I'd hate to see it to be more of a one level type of development and a more unique development. And I think, from when I came on council in May and I worked through this, is we've changed our industrial zoning from 9 to 3. We've increased the FSR on the lands to allow for greater flexibility of what can go on these sites and greater density on these sites. So I would hope that we can see better densities on these buildings and creating more jobs. Thank you.
I'll put myself on the list then. I want to talk about this building that you've got, and it's now 1 story, and you've got a tenant for, I assume they're a tenant, you're not selling it?
Be a joint venture. We own the building with them. They'd be
So then they are a partner in it then? Okay. So one of my concerns was going to be that because it's 1 level, and we'd always looked at multiple levels down there, that the job situation would be difficult for 83 jobs in 1 level in a lot of businesses, so that you were sort of limiting your market area. But if it's a joint venture, then I assume that they will be there for a long time.
That's correct.
Correct?
Correct.
You've made me very happy, thank you. Is there anything else? No? Thank you for, Mr. Mayor.
I do want to thank you for coming out. Coquitlam wants to be a place where people want to do business. You have invested a great stake in our community, and from our perspective, it's a key stake. It's something that so many of us, certainly the 3 that remain on council, said on October 20th, 2008, as we started the process of public hearing for this site. I think one of the challenges we're facing now is that some of the predictions of some residents at the time at the public hearing, I remember some saying that some of the things weren't going to come to pass. And so we're really anxious that the things that were committed come to pass. And I was just looking through the staff report of October 17th, 2008, and I see that some of them have changed, and I accept that so much has changed since, I think our president was still the U.S. president wasn't Obama yet, and so there's a lot that's changed in the world in those 8 years. But I guess that's not so much a question. It's impressing upon everyone that the residents of Coquitlam had a lot of hope in this site. It hasn't come to pass yet. There's still a lot of hope, but there's getting to be more doubt, and that's our challenge today.
We're looking to reinstate or re-inspire the hope when we come forward in December. We're quite anxious to get started, quite bullish, and we're very confident that what we come up with is going to be something that the citizens of Coquitlam are going to be very happy with, and they're going to embrace and be as excited as we are to build it up.
That, as Councillor Reid said, you've made me happy by that last statement, and I look forward to seeing that. I know at one point we were asked as a city to redirect staff time to a different project of yours. It was at your request, and now we really do want this project to move forward in some way. We want. I foresee the time when we can dip our toe in the Fraser River at a riverfront park rather than by trespassing, like I do now.
Aha.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Thank you very much. Oh, did you?
I think Chris
Chris
was on it.
did not?
No, okay. I'll just
I'm sorry.
Okay. I'm, like Councillor Edson, I'm quite concerned about the jobs. And I wasn't on council at the time, but I was following it. And in fact, I spoke at the public hearing, and I was one of those who stood up and worried about the jobs. So I think the commitment to the jobs is key for me. I am worried about the moving of density within the property, that we can achieve those jobs on the other property, because at some point we just can't stack warehouses on top of each other. And I am also concerned about the comment in tonight's report that says that people looking to lease are looking for high ceiling buildings and single story, and I really don't want this to become a warehouse area, or later, a second owner comes in or a leasee comes in and just decides the only thing they can put in there is a big box furniture store or something. I mean, we have to make sure that we somehow make sure that we have facilities that mean that they will have jobs on there. I'm a little more comfortable when you said this is a joint partnership, because one of my concerns is, what if we build this and 5 years later they move out and suddenly it's it's something that's only got 6 people and a forklift working in. So this is encouraging. This is just a concept design. This is not part of the development DP, is it? This that we're looking at here. These pictures.
This is the text amendment. The DP comes forward later. Does
Right.
it not?
Yes. So this is not. This could change substantially between now and then.
Well, the intent would be to maintain the design integrity unless staff has concerns or comments about it, which we would then need to address.
Good. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, now we're done. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Nice to see you all.
See you. Thank you.
And this is on the agenda for this evening, Yes. Item, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just prior to proceeding to the first staff report, I just wanted to update members of the committee on the 3 other business items that were raised subsequent to the agenda being prepared.
I know why you're.
And the first one is OB1, which is garbage, bears, and bylaw enforcement, was raised by Councillor Marsden. OB2 concerns Metro Vancouver's 2040 regional growth strategy, raised by Councillor O'Neill. And OB3 concerns the Tri-Cities news article, and it seeks clarification regarding Councillor Marsden, and the KFN Enterprises, and that was raised by Councillor Wilson. Seeing no others, I'll move on to first report of staff. That concerns Cottonwood Park, its conceptual design options. We have introductory comments by the General Manager of Parks, Recreation and Culture Services, followed by a presentation by the Director of Planning and Business Services. The report's before you for information.
Richard, can you take over while I'm not here? I'm not getting any emails.
Yeah. Are there any listed?
Nobody.
Mr. Radaway.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll do a quick introductory comments. Michelle Hunt is here to do an overview of the entire concept planning process. There's a brief presentation we have. It's largely what's in the report, but walking council quickly through that I think would be useful. Just for the benefit of council, the expansion of Cottonwood has been a long-term priority for the city to support future growth in this area, and even more important now with the Coquitlam Low Heat Neighborhood Plan process, which is very much underway. The city has been acquiring property around Cottonwood for some time, and this really is an important time to begin the process of really making this park, bringing it to the vision that we had for a larger community park. We've highlighted this expansion in the presentation, and also noting that the latest development cost charge bylaw was updated with these acquisitions and this part of the development within the bylaw, as well as what's reflected in the current neighborhood plan is also consistent with what you'll be seeing today. We are advancing it now for a number of reasons. Obviously, the neighborhood plan is in process, but also the YMCA and concert project, which this is linked to, although council certainly would have a different role to play in the rezoning of those sites in the near future. We do have to get our staff ready to begin the process of having this ready for that eventuality. In any event, we have to look at the expansion of this park. So we're proceeding with that, and we do intend to bring this forward as an A priority in the 2017 business plan for council's consideration later this year. So with that, I'll leave it with Michelle to do the presentation.
Thank you. So Cottonwood Park is currently a 2.2-acre neighbourhood park located in the Coquitlam Low Heat neighbourhood area in southwest Coquitlam. As part of the planning for expansion of this park, the first step is obviously to look at the neighbourhood's existing amenities. And in this particular area, we have a number of school sites, as well as a couple of key parks, a couple of which are actually undergoing some improvement this year and next year already. The amenities in these parks and school sites include all-weather fields, a grass field, a number of playgrounds, some sport courts, and the community garden and amenities such as that. So just moving forward. I'm just going to take you back a little bit through the history. In 2002, the park was expanded from 1.35 acres it was 1.35 acres, and in 2002 there were some improvements done to increase sort of the amenities that were there. There was additional playground put in and some seating areas, a sport court. And at that time, an expansion plan was also approved to increase it from the 1.35 acres to a 6-acre parcel right here, and that included an additional 20 lots. In 2014, there was 3 lots that were purchased down here that were included as part of a contribution from Mosaic Homes, and we did some master planning process for the whole 6 acres, and then the piece that was improved, you can see how it sort of fits in. So people sort of say, well, why is there a path that runs from here to here? Well, it was part of the master plan. And that's sort of what we're looking at doing, again, is doing a complete master plan and then figuring out how we can phase that over the next probably 15 to 20 years. So just to talk about the expansion, as Mr. Allover referred to, so we have an existing park of 2.2 acres. In 2002, it was approved to go to a 6-acre parcel. As part of the 2015 Coquitlam Low Heat Neighbourhood Plan process, we have proposed to increase it to 9 acres, and that includes an additional 13 lots down here. This is obviously a very long-term plan, and in the DCC program, that's a 30-year time frame. So, over the next 30 years. As part of the as part of the agreement and the potential development with Concert Properties, we're getting 2.55 acres of land on the west side of the park. So that brings it to a total of, if we continue with that, the full expansion, it would continue to about an 11.5 acre park. So back in 2002, when the original expansion was approved, we started to acquire some various lots. And as you can see, it's incredibly difficult to acquire lots that are contiguous and allow for that park expansion to happen. You know, we managed to acquire these 3 here, and then that helped us in 2014. But that's why it's so difficult to plan these parks and to develop them in a way that, you know, we can add amenities you know, sort of keep adding on. So what we've done in this proposal is come up with that master plan process that looks at the full 11.5 acres and then say, okay, based on what we currently own, which includes this, as well as the potential of the Concert Properties, let's base our first phase of expansion on that. And then as we move forward, if we can acquire some additional properties, we would start to see some extra development happening. So because of that, we've come up with 2 concepts. One starts at Concept A with a number of amenities that can be achieved in the first phase based on the land that we currently own. It includes a smaller sports field, grass sports field, and a ball diamond, as well as tennis courts, both of which are going to be, if the Concert Properties and YMCA proposal go forward next year, would be removed from Coquitlam Park. So we wanted to make sure that they get replaced here. So that's the key amenity here. As well as part of the aquatic strategy, it was identified that this would be a good location for a spray park, and so we've included that, and with that comes a washroom. We've learned that spray parks need washrooms. So what we've had to do, though, is look at the entire parcel and sort of reconfigure it. So unfortunately, we haven't been able to save what's already there. Obviously, we'd save the pieces, but it has to be redesigned so that the play pieces, you know, that we can fit everything in. So in the first phase, this is just the land that we currently own. How would we fit it in? We would get most of those amenities in there, including a youth social area, playgrounds, some picnicking areas, and using the 2 properties that we have off of Aspen Street here as a temporary parking lot. If we manage to acquire some additional properties, we can expand it a little bit further, and that would be a sort of a second phase of construction. And that in this particular concept, that all that means is sort of opening it up and providing some more informal areas. The second concept is looking at a much more spread out with much more sort of informal functions in the first phase. So it would end up again with 3 fields. That's if in the next 15 to 20 years we manage to, you know, acquire all those extra lots, which could take, you know, a significant amount of time. And in the first phase, it would have 2 sports fields, Super 8 sports fields, as well as a ball diamond, and we'd still have the water play area, but we would lose some of the amenities such as the youth, you know, social area. Some of the picnicking would be reduced, and those kinds of amenities. But if we were able to, again, acquire some additional property, we could do quite quickly on the heels of that some additional expansion and include some of those amenities that can't be put in the first phase. So it's a little bit of a juggling act here. We're trying to, you know, take what we've got, but recognize that we might get a little bit more. And, you know, how do we phase this? How do we, you know, provide the amenities that the community may be losing in other parks or that are going to need to have over the next, you know, 10 years as this area develops. The other thing I did want to mention is the sports field strategy, which right now is a 2013 to 2023 document. And once in 2023, we would go back and relook at that document and say, you know, given all the sports fields in this area, given the usage, given participation trends and all of, you know, all those kinds of things, you know, do we need to continue building out this park and add on that those additional fields? So our next step is to basically get your feedback on and really what we're looking for is, do you want us to concentrate on putting a lot of amenities there, in the first phase, and then, building out and making it more open as we move forward, or do you want to see it sort of a more open, passive park with less amenities, sort of more open green space that can be used for sports, but can also be used for picnicking, can be used for throwing a frisbee. It's very hard for me to explain, but I think, you're either seeing a park that's full of amenities, full of sort of active amenities, versus a park that's more open green space that can be used for those types of things, and that's what we'd like to get your input on. We'll then refine the concept and go out for public consultation, find out what the community would like to see down there, and come back to you with a final concept in early next year, so that we can continue planning this park. That's it. I think I have another slide. What item are we on?
Same item. We have two speakers. You done?
I'm done, sorry, yes.
Okay, back to Councillor Reid with Councillor O'Neill and Councillor Martin on deck.
On deck, ooh, Jerry.
Thanks very much. It's great to see these plans come ahead, and I think council's opinion at this stage certainly carries some weight, but we really do need to see and hear what the people of Coquitlam think about this, especially the people of Coquitlam, but also we have to think about the people that aren't living here yet, because this is why we really need the big expansion. All the people we're going to be bringing into this area, just to the west and just to the southwest, north, east, everywhere, mostly. A lot of through high-rise development that was predicated on this sort of thing coming forward. So, specifically on the input you wanted, essentially between attachment 9 and attachment 11 at this stage. I'm in favor of an amenity-rich concept right now, so that'd be attachment 9, concept A for phase 1 construction with the 5.6 acres. I think that you sort of indicate that not as much green space. It's still going to be a substantial amount of green space that's open, of course, and it's what I think with the numbers of people going in there quite quickly, you need to get the amenities in there quickly as well. I think the staff is leaning that way as well. But one question I wanted to clarify, and I know we discussed this before in conjunction with the YMCA project, is a connection between this park and the Y, if it goes ahead. What sort of connection will there be?
You mean physical connection?
A physical connection, not programming or anything, but in terms of walking between the areas or biking or whatever. Just a fairly short distance, but I think it's important that we have a good connection between the two.
Yes, and I think in the past we've identified that there is a connection between the two parks, and I think it's been also raised by Councillor Wilson or a number of other council members. The road pattern, I think we envision having and I think that's shown in the neighborhood plan, but I figure out where it is here. It's not that clear, but we have an opportunity to do a greenway connection. There's a number of north-south roads that connect this area up to the transit station. So there's specifically one running directly. Maybe put it up, if you can maybe put up the one with the quick gift. Actually, that's fine. Actually, the other one is fine. One of the options, yeah. So if you see that right there, that's actually a road. In fact,
looks
have
like
a pointer.
the side of a grand
Yeah. So this is actually going to be a road. Hopefully, the pointer works. This is a road. And this road actually connects straight through up to the transit station through that block. So that's an opportunity to do a greenway, a really good greenway all the way up to the transit station, and actually right up to the YMCA. Future YMCA and Coquitlam Park. So that's a very strong connection. And our plan is, and it's been identified in the neighborhood plan, that we'd have a greenway design on that site so we can connect both parks.
I know that's on the minds of a lot of current residents there, and I think it's something that the future residents will really appreciate as well. So I wanted to make sure that that hadn't been left behind. That's it. So concept A, the amenity-rich concept.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dennis?
Good, thank you. I'm going to agree with Councillor O'Neill with regards to Concept A. I think it's the one that does make the most sense. It does still have a significant amount of green space, and when you look at 3 multi-use grass fields, when it comes to families just going out and running around, kicking a ball around, that obviously provides that, so long as it's not over-programmed with structure stuff. I think it's important to have that ability for families to get out and play, especially given there's going to be a number of high-rises in the area. They're not going to have the backyard to play in, so this is their backyard. The one piece I did note in looking at Concept B versus Concept A, and this is, it's not quite conceptual, it's perhaps a bit more detailed, has to deal with the positioning of the ball diamond and in which direction the batters will be hitting the ball.
Yes.
A 50 by 70 sports field is not a huge sports field, and you put some softball players, I see them on Concept A parking a number of balls into the tennis courts, and I don't think they're going to have a great deal of ability to return those shots. So from the safety of the tennis players, I really think the ball diamond's got to be pointed in the other way. So again, just I'd put that out there now. It's a little bit more detailed and conceptual, but I think it's important that we keep the interest and the safety of the tennis players in mind while we lay this out. Okay, thank you.
I have Anita.
Well, I appreciate the comments around the park expansion being subject to successful rezoning on the why related. I appreciate that. It's kind of the first disclaimer. A couple of pieces of information that I would really like to be able to see as we move forward with this process is what is the current demographic profile of the people that are living in that community, and also there are some developers in our community that have said that they will provide the demographic information of the buyers. So I'd like to know seniors, kids, family size, that sort of stuff. I think that sort of information will help us. And the other thing I wouldn't mind seeing in reports going forward is the buildings, what their offerings are right now of amenity space, because these high-rises are being asked to provide a significant amount of amenity space, and it would be interesting to know what they're offering on the inside. We're going to have thousands of new people. We're also going to have thousands of dogs. We already talked about one proposal where they've provided their own dog amenities on the site, but I have a feeling we're going to have a whole lot of dogs running around this space. So I know we don't necessarily always want to have off-leash area, but I just know that one of the issues with some of the school board fields is there's poop on those fields every morning. Wanted to talk a little bit about the linear parks that was mentioned in the past. I'd like to have thoughts around, and I don't know if we need them. I won't know until I see the demographic information, but to reduce isolation, which often happens in high-rises for seniors and singles and people that don't necessarily get out, to have dedicated walking loops. For sure, people are going to want to be out of the high-rise. So whether it needs to be linear parks or just dedicated walking loops, it would be interesting. Also, dedicated fitness and exercise zones. I couldn't tell. The writing was kind of small, but I like those.
We do. Where is it? There's outdoor exercise.
I think it's outdoor exercise here in the bottom. Yeah.
I think that's a super cool idea.
Yeah.
Community board, I just made a note that maybe there's a space there for us to have a community board too. I'm just thinking about isolation and living in high rises. Obviously the Wi-Fi, I'm looking at this for girls, and I see you have a youth social space there. I'm not going to ask what it is right now, but I hope it's not just a skateboard park. I'm sure it'll be some space. And I think that's it. But yeah, I'm for the amenities. I'd just like us to think not just kids, seniors and all kinds, and dogs, and I'd love to see some more stats on that demographic profile of who's coming in. Thanks so much. Oh, sorry, one more. Fountains, spray parks. You know the flat, I'm sure you've been to lots of cities where it's just these things that pop out of the concrete.
Yeah.
Kids go crazy for that stuff, but it's also nice for adults. So I'm wondering if it has to be a dedicated kid water space, or if there could be something fun like that that's not just for kids, because that's kind of cool, watching the water leap around. And so that's it. Thanks.
Okay. Councillor Rasmussen.
Thank you very much. it's a good options. I think option A provides the amenities that we need right away. I think just not the high rises. We have a lot of increased density in town housing and higher densities where they don't have the backyard space to play anymore. And I like the fact that we're doing these in phases and we're adjusting the plan as we move along, because it's over a 30-year plan. Councillor Marsden mentioned one thing, but about the baseball diamond. I really think it should be not in this plan, just because it reminds me of Victoria Park. You can only put, if you turn it the other way, you're going to be going onto a roadway if you had adults. And at Victoria Park, they limited for baseball down to small kids, and then they stopped using it altogether. So I think for the investment, and we saw you report year and a half or so ago about participations, and baseball is not one of the growing participation sports. So I think when we're looking at our assets and something, and the size of this small field here, to put a ball diamond in there, I don't think is conducive to the area. Yeah. I think we can use the space back there better for something else in that area. But I do think this area, as we go towards the future and the build out, the 11.5 acres, I would think will be quite necessary as we look at because when you look at some of the maps here and you look at some of the schools there, but when you look at Cottonwood Park to the Coquitlam development, North Road development, there's parks but there's schools, and we've had issues about the access and use of schools for sports groups and kids. So I think we need our own fields, our own controllability and access and scheduling of fields that we have our own control over. So I'm supportive of option A, and I think we just need to relook at that space down there and make it more maybe.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll say that portion of the park that we added a couple of years back, I've had the opportunity to be in the park a lot, or be adjacent to the park a lot in the last couple of months, and I've never seen anyone actually in that portion of the park. Other than that circle at the bottom up against Foster, which is used as a smoking pit. And I trust you. You folks are the design professionals, but the other portion of the park is crowded.
Yes.
And the new portion is I recognize it's supposed to be passive. It's quite passive. Like as in really, really, really passive. And so I'm looking forward to seeing what the grand scheme was for the portion of it that's on Foster. It's right now the only portion that touches Foster. It has the most traffic. It has the most visibility as far as our parks in the west side of Coquitlam are precious, and I want to see us make the very best use of particularly the ones where we're spending a lot of money acquiring. We're trying to expand them, and I just wanted to make that comment. And we also obviously need a better way of describing no smoking for a variety of cultures to make sure that everyone understands that we can't smoke there.
I think the comments have been provided by council members, and as you can see in the future, we'll have the water play nearby. I think maybe it was a little bit too visionary, and when the development all the way around it starts to shape up, including the occupancies south of Foster, etc., and the rest of the park, I think it'll be a different context. But I think we will revisit that even in the interim. Let's take a look. I've heard comments that it is an area that we get a lot of people congregating, just smoking and things like that. So we'll look at it.
And in the context of Councillor Wilson's comments about fields, that is a very well used. It's not even a field. It's
an open grass.
As far as it's just an open space with slopes on one side, so you lose the ball all the time. But nonetheless, it's incredibly. It's the United Nations of when you see that battle between the Syrians and the Bhutanese kids. They're 8 years old and they're pretty intense, and it's wonderful to watch. I wish in hindsight we had created an open space in the southern portion against Foster, because that would have allowed a little bit more flexibility, because right now one age group has to play at a time. Right. So I look forward to seeing, they don't have to be as big as that, but I think field space will be an important concept, an important part of it.
Okay, Craig, you haven't had Craig on the list?
No? I didn't have Craig on the list.
Craig, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm glad to see we're moving ahead on this. And one of the things that has concerned me is that, having raised my family in an area that didn't have a lot of parks early on, it struck me as you're worried about tot lots, you're worried about this stuff, and then before you know it, it's, geez, my kids need sport courts, and because they do grow out of those plastic playthings so quickly. And now my kids go up to the sport court and say it's too small. I said 5 of us are bumping into each other, and where do we kick a soccer ball? So we're addressing those things now. I look at this as the same area, an area that's growing, an area that doesn't have a lot of amenities, and what do we need first? I originally looked at that as a plan, we need lots of open space, we need fields now. But I also think that probably we will serve more people and younger families by putting in the amenities, but we can't do that at the loss of green space, because there comes a time when kids just want a place they can kick a soccer ball around. I think A does that. It gives us a small field. I want to make sure that we progress to the full deal, to the 11 acres, because the way I see that is we concentrate the amenities, the family activities, the picnic tables at this end, and then we move to an area where the sports and the more active things are away and in a different part of the field. So I think that in a 30-year plan, it moves to more like a town center model where we have all the activities around the lake and we have the sports stuff at the end. And I agree with Councillor Asmussen. I think we are going to need the sports stuff there. We're going to need the fields eventually. I wish we could do it all today, because there will be young kids moving in, and there will be older kids moving in, and we're not going to be able to provide everything to everyone, but this is a great start. So I think we're there. I too want to see some green corridors, some connectivity into some of the apartment developments that may come up there. I want to see a walking area through there so that people can stroll through. This is a significant sized park, 11 acres. It's what I think. Remember, it would be not counting maybe say Monday parking things, but it's like our second or third largest park. It's not quite Blue Mountain, but it's a substantial park, so that you can have a walking trail that's more than just a track going around in a circle. And I think to look at ways to, if we don't get it all built now, at least the idea that eventually we will have a walking trail that goes through, and that people who are walking can see kids playing here, a sport court here, and a spray park, and that creates an experience for people going walking. The sport court, I'd like to see it as large as we can. Maybe even go to a full size where you've got the basketball hoops at either end. Walking area, and as I said, I'd love to do it all. We can't, but it's a great start, and option A.
It's a full court. Full court.
It is a full court?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, Chris had one more question, and then we're going to move on.
I like the concept and everything, but I agree with what Councillor Zerillo talked about in terms of demographics. And as long as developers are only building, 3 to 5% of the units more than 2 bedrooms, I don't think we're going to have a lot of families in this area. So it would be really important, I think, to know if we're building 3 fields that we are going to have a lot of kids moving into that area. And I'm really interested to see how New Westminster's plan to get more 3-bedroom units built works out, and same in Vancouver, because we have to have more 3-bedroom units in these buildings, and whether the developers do it on their own or whether it's a city policy requiring more 3-bedroom, we need families to live in this area, and if we're going to build parks for families, we want to make sure that there are families. Thanks.
Okay, Jerry has something important.
It's just Councillor Hodge talked about the relative size of this park. On our list of currently developed parks, of which we have 61, an 11-acre park would make this the 18th largest park in the city.
I think Miller's a good
Miller's the 17th,
and he's 12
right
acres,
on 12.16
yeah,
acres.
so it's a very good comparison, which is a very substantial park. Not enough for a walking trail, easily. So thank you, Councillor.
Welcome. And Mundy Park, by the way, is the largest at 440 acres. That's 2/3 of a square mile.
Yeah.
All right, with all the statistics and all the conversation, have we had a mover and a seconder?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Next item, please.
I'm going anyway.
Next item 4, pertains to the Town Centre Park Master Plan update in the public consultation phase, and it's before you for information.
Move receipt.
Second.
Did you want a presentation or anything? No?
There's no
All in
presentation.
Oh, Brent?
No, just one. Just.
Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Thank you very much.
How'd you do that?
It's a good report.
Oh, we got the OB items now.
Oh,
That's what's different.
The
I was thinking,
or not to be.
The minute shall note.
Okay, do we want to recess?
Nope.
No, we're still OBs now.
We have 3 OB items.
Please, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So OB1 concerns garbage, bears, and bylaw enforcement. It was raised by Councillor Marsden.
Thank you. I don't think anybody has gone on social media or picked up a newspaper of late without seeing some sort of reference to Coquitlam garbage and bears. And so with that, obviously, enforcement has ramped up. We've seen some statistics on that. But I'm curious, because we have seen, we've received feedback from residents that are both supportive of the new stance and the enhanced enforcement, and we've seen some that express some concerns about it. So recently, some discussion about the bylaw has been about not putting garbage out before 5:30, and it must be between, I believe the bylaw says between 5:30 a.m. and 7:30 a.m. And there's been some people suggesting that, why does it have to be out before 7:30? If I know my guy doesn't come by until 11, why can't it just be in my hands to put it out? So I'm wondering from an enforcement perspective, the 5:30 may make sense, but the end time may not. Has there been any dialogue on that? Any thoughts? Any opinion?
Yes, through the chair. So the 5:30 setup time is the time that's critical for the wildlife and bear issues. The 7:30 time corresponds with when the garbage collection starts. So it's not a time that we enforce, but if residents call and say, oh, I didn't put my garbage out till 10:30 this morning and I missed my collection, that's an unfortunate circumstance for them. Garbage collection starts at 7:30, so that's the significance of the 7:30 setup time. And certainly lots of people memorize the routes and have a general idea, but if they miss it, that's on them.
That's on them at that point.
But the 5:30 setup time is the one that's critical to us from a bear and wildlife management perspective.
So I might suggest that in that correspondence we do get from residents, when we respond back to them, I think we need to be clear in that response that the 7:30 it's not something, we're not ticketing somebody because they put their trash out at 7:45. I think it's important that a communication back, when somebody does express displeasure over it, that we be very clear on that while the parameters are there, I think it's important that we say the ball's back in your court. If you miss it, that's on you. Right. But we're not actively going out and writing $500 tickets because you put your trash out at 8 a.m. as opposed to 7:30. No. I think that's good public information to have. Mm-hmm. With that, obviously, there's bears in the area. There's been bears in the area forever. I think back to the 70s and in the early 80s, there was always some discussion with regards to the fact that there was bears in around the Mundy Park area. And the slide you're putting up there shows there's our sightings and activity. I saw last night one of the largest bears to date. On all fours, his shoulders came 4 inches below the top of the garbage can. This was a large bear. Wow. And he walked by the garbage can and it was locked and he just continued to walk. So that's fine. But the point I have to make in talking to some other people, I'm wondering, I don't see other municipalities with this much media attention about bears, Whistler, Pemberton, there's been a lot of that. So is there learnings in other municipalities? Is there things that they're doing that we're not? And I recognize we've done so much along the Bear Smart path, and I think staff can be commended for taking us down that route. Are there things still on the table that we can look at and contemplate doing? Are there off-the-wall things? I've heard of not necessarily municipalities, but other jurisdictions where they look and say, you know what we're going to do? We know the bears are going to be out and about, so we just go and, as opposed to have them walking through the neighborhoods, we just go out in the woods and dump a bunch of green waste. That's where they go to feed. Again, all kinds of different outside-the-box pieces. Are there things that we're looking at right now that are going to see us move forward? Because I don't know that just slapping folks with $500 fines is going to achieve it. Okay,
through the chair. So there's a number of questions built in there, so I'm going to try to hit them. In terms of comparison to other municipalities, what we know is that this area of the province, we know this from the Conservation Officer Service. This area of the province does receive the highest call volume of anywhere. So we have that factor facing our community. Relative to the other communities that you brought up, like Whistler and others, we do make a point of engaging with these other municipalities to discuss, different methods that are working here and there. A lot of the approach really comes down to the municipality and what are the factors affecting that municipality. So if we look at Coquitlam, the first thing is that what a lot of people don't realize or think about is Coquitlam is a mountain community. This is not a downtown community. This is not downtown Vancouver, downtown Richmond, downtown Surrey. This is a mountain community, very similar to Whistler being a mountain community or Squamish being a mountain community, North Vancouver being a mountain community. With that, we have a significant population in Coquitlam and a lot of growth happening. We have a lot of new people moving into the community. Some of these other communities like Whistler or Squamish or North Vancouver aren't experiencing that same level of growth and that same amount of training and teaching of new residents and immigrant residents. That whole demographic that we're dealing with in Coquitlam. So those are factors that are unique to Coquitlam if you want to compare it to a community like Whistler. And then also the tolerance of the community and looking at a community like North Vancouver where there's a lot of those residents have lived there a lot longer, and they have learned over time and have a different level of tolerance and acceptance and, frankly, different behaviors. So looking in Coquitlam, what we're seeing is the number one attractant is garbage, period. We need to address that issue, and we need to shift that culture among our residents in particular to understand that they are living in a mountain community. They are living up against a very significant wildlife corridor. And to live responsibly in that community, there is a responsibility on the residents to do their part. We have, as a city, for over 10 years, been trying to shift that level of responsibility amongst our residents. We have put in a very significant amount of resources, both financially and staff time, to try to shift that and teach people and provide that outreach. And we are not seeing a shift in the complaint calls we get or the number of violations to our bylaws that have been put in place to protect safety and to protect the animals. So we have seen a flat line in that regard. A year ago, almost exactly a year ago, almost to the day, was when we realized that we had to start putting a harder push on. And that was when we shifted to a much more enforcement-heavy approach. In that year, we have issued well over 1,000 warnings. I think the latest number is around 1,500 or 1,600 warnings. Still a flat line on our call volume, our complaints, our bear sightings, as you're seeing on this map I've put up. And then we had that very unfortunate incident in August that really, really drew attention. It's probably the worst, among the worst thing you would want to have happen to call attention to this matter, but it did. And you'll see on this map, or this chart that I've put up here, I really quickly pulled this information together for you today. But you'll see in August a very significant spike in the number of service requests, and that's the term we use for when we get complaints or calls for addressing issues. Almost double. And that number, I didn't even break it down by week, but basically after that incident happened, just the amount of social policing amongst our residents and the concern amongst our residents pretty well quadrupled our call volume basically on a weekly basis. So with that, we had to respond. And we're being very proactive and very strategic in that response. We maintain a daily connection with Conservation Officer Service. We know exactly where our problem areas are, exactly where our problem neighborhoods are, and that's where we're focusing, that's where we're moving. I am happy to say that although we've had this significant amount of attention in the last 3 weeks because of unfortunate circumstances in particular, with this extra concerted effort and the unfortunate additional extra step to heavier enforcement and having to issue tickets, we have, in about the last week, started to see it trending downwards now in terms of complaints on our patrols. We're seeing fewer and fewer cans out. And I'm especially happy to say that on Sunday night, it was our first patrol shift ever where we did not find a cart out. And that's just very significant because that was also a statutory holiday. And so typically the night before a statutory holiday, confusion, whatever, this and that, we often see a lot of carts out, and so we didn't see them on Sunday, and we had much fewer complaints over the last 2 days. So I'm not going to draw a huge, strong conclusion that we're there, but what I'm saying is there appears to us to be a shifting, and we're hoping that we're shifting in that direction. So now to answer your final question about can we do more, I think that once we can get that control over that and have our residents working with us to understand that garbage is the number one thing attracting, then we can start looking at, okay, now what else might we do once we have control over that situation? Where else can we now apply our resources? Are there other things that we can look at? But we got to hit that line first.
Okay. All right, because I think it's important that, we make sure we're doing everything we can. We can ask our residents to change behaviors, and your comment about North Vancouver has different behaviors. Do you attribute that to just longevity, in that they're not seeing the development piece that we are, the growth, the population growth that we are?
I'm saying it anecdotally, but I would say it's just a slightly different demographic there, and it's not they don't have the population growth that we have. So as we have more and more new people coming in, it's more and more new people that we need to teach and help make sure that they're understanding that they've moved into a mountainside community, they've moved into a wilderness community. They are not living in a full urban center.
Okay. So the locking cans that we have now, obviously we still have some challenges. The bears do have the ability to break those brass clips incredibly enough. These are strong animals.
Yeah.
Where are we on the testing of the gravity feed locks? And where are we on the testing? What's the timeline for testing? And would we proceed for timeline for rollout should we deem that to be successful?
So the gravity locks pilot we have had underway for a year or so-ish. It's very voluntary. We have 35 homes that are testing those gravity locks right now on their green cart and garbage cart. We have another approximate 20 homes that we're going to roll those carts out to this month. So we'll have about 55 residents testing those. We're just, again, it's just kind of a voluntary program. We're right now just receiving feedback, and we were actually looking to have those carts actually tested at the Wildlife Center in Kamloops, where they can actually test and tell us how wildlife proof are these bins. There's unfortunately been on their end a delay on our ability to do that, so we do hope that at some point we could take that next step, because as of right now the best information we have is the gravity locks. Although they may end up being more effective than the clips, we can't at this point say that they're bear proof. And similarly, those clips, we've never advertised them as being bear proof. We call them wildlife resistant. A raccoon's not going to get in, a crow's not going to get in, likely a coyote, other small animal's not going to get in, but a bear will. A determined bear, a fed bear, a garbage bear will get into those bins, full stop.
Yeah. Well, I've seen bears tear open sheds to get to the garbage cans.
They do.
When they tear those open. So clearly they can't get in. There's, again, it's a matter of what steps can we take. Is there something we can do from that gravity lock perspective to 35 homes, 55 homes is a very small sampling. Have we given thought to rolling out to some of those problem areas and saying, we're just going to go do it, and we're going to take, 10, 15 homes that we know are a problem. We've issued warnings there. We're going to put on that, but not those other 10 or 15, and then watch what happens.
We could get to that point once we have the opportunity to actually do an assessment on the ones that are out there, and we would bring that back to council for a discussion when we have that. and they are, right now we have picked neighborhoods where we know there is bear activity and or have been complaints. I would be hesitant to draw a conclusion that we could put those in all of the bear areas and not have issues. I don't think we're ready to draw that kind of conclusion. I think first and foremost we need to be focusing on shifting the behavior of residents and make sure that everybody is doing their part to be securing their own waste. To generate that smelly waste, you got to secure it, and that's really critical.
Thank you.
Okay, Richard.
Thank you. This clearly is the most important communications issue facing the city. Last year was water conservation. This year was bears. Both of them are your responsibility. What are you doing wrong? The 5:30 to 7:31, and I've seen some of the responses, and I appreciate the responses are very clear in the email. They say, well, actually, we only say 7:30 because, and so the penalty for 5:30 is a ticket. The penalty for 7:30 is your garbage might not get picked up. So there is no enforcement on the 7:30. So I think we're communicating. Perhaps we even need to drop 7:30 completely from our discussions publicly, until because the public knows they got to get their garbage out before, and they also know, I think, not to use the garbage truck as an alarm clock because it produces running outside in pajamas and things like that. You've done that. Yes. Thank goodness the squeaks break. The brakes squeak. The initiatives before fines, I note that primarily the initiative was warning and a whole bunch of communications efforts and we've seen you at the public market and the farmers market and all kinds of other places. So I think we need the public to know that we do an awful lot before we get to a fine, and that the fine really isn't the first initiative here. It's the last initiative. It's the very last thing. September's numbers seem to be suggesting that we're getting somewhere on the fines. Obviously, I want to make the message to the public. We don't want the money. We don't want the fine. We want the compliance, and the fine is simply a way of trying to impress on people that our neighborhoods won't be safe, and the bears won't be safe, and our communities won't be safe unless everyone cooperates. So I'll say that. And last thing, the parks garbage cans. There was a reference in one of the media about the garbage cans in parks, and I recognize that's not so much your department, but I also recognize that all of our garbage cans in our parks are wildlife resistant now, have been since 2008, I believe. And perhaps you had something to say on that.
All I can say is that that's absolutely correct. All of our bins in all of our city parks were converted to wildlife resistant bins in 2008. So those reports that we've seen in the media suggesting otherwise are not accurate.
We just have the two kinds, right?
Yes, and we have two kinds of wildlife resistant bins, but absolutely our Parks Department has confirmed that every single bin in our city parks are considered wildlife resistant since 2008.
And in some ways, from my perspective at least, in some ways the deepest ones, what they call plastic, are the most secure because they can't be left open. The public can't accidentally misuse them or stuff them too full. They're bear resistant. Bears can't get at them unless someone cuts off the lock.
Correct.
Okay. That's it. As council's wrestling, as every community is, Coquitlam perhaps more than a lot. I've been, though, to Jasper and to Whistler, and I hate going on a tour of someone's garbage systems, but, communities where they've actually had to abandon door-to-door, had to abandon curbside pickup because the bears just were getting at the garbage. I think we can continue down the path we've gone, but everyone's got to get on board, and I appreciate very much all the efforts that you've gone to. I know that communications is working on some additional multicultural pieces to make sure that we get the message across and that language isn't a barrier to the understanding of what has to happen here, but we've all got to work together. Thank you.
Hey, we have a long speakers list here. I have Craig, Brent, Terry, and Chris. So can we keep it to new information so Stephanie doesn't have to repeat herself all the time?
And thank you to Councillor Marsden for raising it, because it has been a lot on social media over the summer. I agree. I think we saw a spike following the incident. And particularly was the Burke Mountain group was very active on social media, and I appreciate all the comment we were able to provide for them, because I think and a lot of that is coming from peer pressure, from neighbor pressure. I'm happy to hear that the Sunday night, which is garbage, the night before pickup in my neighborhood, that you didn't find any. Because a week earlier, I was coming home late and I did a quick spot check. I found 3, which I thought was a whole lot better than about a year ago. So clearly that message is getting out there. I am one of the 35 that's testing the gravity lock, because I live right across from Hyde Creek, and we have bears in our neighborhood almost daily. So far, mine's working great, and I'm hoping that we will be able to expand that program into areas. But I think we have to be very clear that this is on green cans only. We are getting residents sort of saying, "I want gravity locks or locks on the black garbage cans," and the messaging there is that if bears are getting into your black garbage cans, clearly there's something in there that shouldn't be in there, and I think we have to continue with that messaging. I agree with the 5:30 to 7:30. I had a number of people sort of say, "Why are you ticketing me if I don't get my garbage out before 7:30?" And I think we have to maybe on our newspaper ad or something sort of say, bylaw requires no earlier than 7:30, but in order to, no earlier than 5:30, but in order to ensure pickup, it's recommended that you have it out by 7:30 to guarantee pickup. So I think we have to sort of change that, because it implies the bylaw is 5:30 to 7:30, and I think some clarification would ease some residents' concerns on that. The one question I had is that I noticed that when I did my evening drive around at 1 in the morning, there were about 8 people that had put their blue cans, so their blue boxes out, and maybe this is an opportunity to talk about whether recycling boxes are included in this.
Yes, through the chair. Our bylaw does restrict any garbage or recycling from being put out before 5:30 in the morning. Our greatest concern is the green waste, the organic waste, and the smelly waste, and certainly those who aren't rinsing their recyclables as they're supposed to be could be attracting wildlife also, which is the reason why we require that the recycling bins also not be put out until the morning of collection. But certainly our focus is more on the organic waste itself in the green carts and the garbage.
Bins out, you would just leave a note or something to let people know, because there seemed to be some confusion on the recycling.
Yeah, our emphasis is the green cart and the garbage cart.
But the others could. Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Brent.
Well, I hope this trend continues. I mean, I look at my area, I drive around, I look at the areas, and I look at one of the people are still setting out garbage overnight. The other issue I find a lot of people are doing now is you take a lot of the single-family homes and built the RS7, RS8s with the parking pad for a tenant back there. A lot of people are parking their 2 cans in that parking area outside the fence on the laneway. So if a bear walks down the laneway, the garbage can's right there. And there's probably in the streets around my area, there's probably maybe 10 people that are leaving their garbage that's not inside the fence, but outside the fence, easy access to the laneway. Bears have gone up and down there. We've had some problems with a mother and 2 cubs in the area and a mother and 3 cubs in that area accessing garbage, getting into the cans. I think people are thinking that that's okay, but that's still a big set-out problem, and we need to do some enforcement on that one, and I don't know where are you on that?
Yes, through the chair. So that is an interesting situation, that one. So our bylaw restricts the set-out before 5:30 on garbage collection morning. Otherwise, the requirement is to secure the attractants and not feed wildlife is the terminology that we use. So we don't actually dictate, we haven't gone to the point of dictating how people secure their garbage. The requirement is to secure it and make sure wildlife isn't getting into it. So in a situation like you're describing with the laneways, We haven't said that the garbage carts and green carts can't be stored outside. The question is whether or not there's actually food waste in those carts when they're set at the laneway. So we're not forcing people to store those carts in their homes. We don't even necessarily force them to store them in a garage, although we say that that's the preference. But a clean, empty garbage cart can be stored outside. Or even a garbage cart that doesn't have any kind of food attractant, smelly food waste, whatever, can be stored outside. It cannot be set out, though, for collection. So the laneways are a tricky one. Any report that we have of wildlife getting into those bins, that is subject to enforcement.
Well, we've had issues in a couple of the laneways around where I am in different areas where those garbage cans sit out all the time there in the back area, and they are put their green waste in there, and bears have gotten into them. And you know, the sad thing, what I think is about the education of people is we all know that the garbage bear is a dead bear, and nobody wants dead bears, especially mother with young cubs. We saw the issue with the one bear that attacked the girl, the 2 young cubs being relocated and all that. I think we have to take a bigger stand on how we have garbage secured. I can understand that those containers, as Councillor Marston pointed out, while they have the locks on them, they're not bear-proof. They're resistant. They're not bear-proof. And I think we have to do a better job on those type of enforcements, whether we issue people a warning letters, tell them to bring it inside, or we have to look at our regulations and add a regulation that they have to have it in a more secure area, not on a lane where it's that easy walking up and down the laneway for the bears to get at.
And actually, sorry, I will correct what I just said prior to that, because we do have a requirement in the bylaw about how the carts, like there's some very specific language about not visible from the street and distance and et cetera, so we do reach out to residents when we see that laneway situation, and we do let them know, and we do provide the warnings. But the ticketing, that we're applying discretion to the ticketing, and we're ticketing right now for the actual set out on before garbage collection day or wildlife accessing it, and we're trying to encourage people to not do what you're describing of inching them out the laneway, because you're right, what you're saying. You don't necessarily know what's in them, and they're still an attractant.
So I think when we do our enforcement sweeps, and I want to continue more of that, but I think rather than just going out the day before pickup, we have to go to areas, a couple days before, and to see those areas that people have the cans set out and seeing what's going on in those areas that they're sitting out there all the time, and have a talk with those people, because it's really about education, about people getting to understand what they need to do properly. And then we won't have to have bears coming into the area. We won't have to be putting down bears. That's my hope.
Thank you. Terry.
Councillor O'Neill. Okay, there's 2 of us. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
The issue with the gravity locks, and would suggest that's important for that time between 7:30 and 4 in the afternoon, when somebody's put it out thinking 7:30 is the deadline, I got to get it up by then, but the garbage collection doesn't take place till 3 or 4 in the afternoon. We were corresponding about that a week or 2 ago about a street that's an issue on. Do you have any rough idea, or maybe you got a specific idea, figures on what % of the bear garbage complaints we get are related to that period when the can is sitting there waiting for the green truck to come and pick up the green waste? And what % is related to people who put out their cans too early, the night before, the day before, 2 days before? It's happened on our street some weeks ago. Do you have any idea? Is this really an issue of that long waiting period sometime for many streets as a green can is sitting there, or is the bear garbage problem an issue of people putting the cans out too early, or is it 50-50 or something like that?
So through the chair, I don't have that level of analysis of our data right here for you today. We can certainly look at that, and when we do analyze our numbers for 2016, we'll look at that. Just at a high level, and knowing what I know just dealing with it on a day-to-day basis, the very majority of our calls are driven by complaints about garbage set out the night before, or wildlife accessing it outside of that collection period. It does happen, and it's unfortunate that it does, but what we've done in looking at the collection zones and how the garbage trucks are scheduled is our highest priority areas are the ones that the garbage is being collected first thing in the morning, and then obviously as the trucks are moving through the city, they have to, like, others are going to get collected later, and that's just a fact. So we try to shift those collection zones or the collection route, I should say, based on that traffic, that complaint traffic of the bear sightings, so that those really vulnerable areas are getting it collected first.
Right. So the gravity lock situation is would help in two ways. If this works, it would help those people who are abiding by the law, putting their carts out correctly, but there's a 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 hour wait before the cart is actually picked up, so that the can won't be easily accessible, and but it might also it would prevent some of the problems perhaps associated with people who put their cans out too early. But that's not who we're aiming for. We're not wanting to give them a reason to put their cans out too early. They might think, oh, I've got a gravity lock now, I can put it out the night before, the bear's not going to get in. That's not what the gravity locks are about. It's for that period, 3, 4, 5 hours where the can is sitting there otherwise unlocked. With the gravity locks, it would only open up when the can's turned totally upside down, right? So that's
correct, and that is the intention of the gravity lock, is for that window of time at the curb, not as a substitute for securing your waste appropriately.
Got a couple other points. So I think there's some confusion about exactly how you're supposed to store your cans in the 6 days when you don't have your garbage being picked up. So I think some people think it has to be in the garage. Some people that have it very close to the streets, as Councillor Asmussen was saying. And but if it's not secure, at the very least, what you have to do, if it's not secure, like inside a shed or garbage, at the very least, you've got to keep the locks on. And that's what the locks are for, right? Because if everybody's stored inside, you wouldn't need the locks, right?
So technically all of the food waste, all of the attractant waste should be stored inside, and that's what we message. We don't think that it's...
Bylaw? Is that an actual bylaw provision that food waste has to be stored inside?
We have not worded it in that way. It's that it must be secure and you can't feed wildlife. So
people would think if they just put it inside their green cart, stored outside by the back lane, but off the back lane, but lock the cart, that's okay. But you're saying that's not really okay. So we got a bit of a disconnect here then.
We do have a little bit of gray area there, and it is something that we may want to revisit. We have attempted to allow some flexibility for people to be able to manage their situation at their residences. So there was a conscious decision to not direct people that the carts have to be stored inside, because they are large carts and that may not be realistic or reasonable for everybody. We have another clause within the bylaw that allows us to direct people. If there's a significant problem on their property, we can direct people to build a shed or direct people to build an enclosure. But we haven't really had to use that, but it is a backstop. What we have attempted to do is to try to shift this behavior and allow people that opportunity to figure out what will work for their property to ensure that they're not attracting wildlife onto their property. We may need to go to that extra step where we actually direct that everyone stores it inside. Right now it's a best practice. Yeah. And then if we are called to your residence because there is a problem and we find that that food waste is insecure and has been accessed by wildlife, then that's on the resident.
Yeah, that's interesting. We'll be interested in following this one to see whether or not we need to get more specific about it. For the record, I've given this advice to people and they go, oh, really? I hadn't thought of that. They keep their green cans outside, but and they were kind of leery about putting their green waste from the kitchen outside over the course of the day, and I say I freeze it. I've got a big enough freezer space where I just freeze it, and they go, oh, great idea. And even when I put that out at 5 in the morning, it's still rock hard and not as stinky. So I just use the green can for the garden cuttings all week long, and they don't attract anybody.
Well, exactly, and that's exactly the kind of messaging that we are telling people over and over again. And we've got lots of things on our website and our brochures and all the various ways. There's so many options that are available for that. Freezing is one of them. Yeah. There's other things that people can do too. Yeah. It's just getting to that point and erasing that fear of inconvenience.
Third point I wanted to bring up was, and thank you, Councillor Marsden, for putting this on the agenda, because it's been a huge issue all month long, right? And Warner, you've been working overtime, I think, on the issue. Thank you for all that. You've been doing some great work. Our primary concern should always be the safety of our residents. I know we want to protect wildlife and we want to live in harmony with the wonderful natural surroundings that we have. And I know that I recall seeing on our website somewhere some basic do's and don'ts about what to do if you do see a bear and how to react. Whose actual responsibility is it to have an education program out there to tell people how to take extra precautions? Because this was, I encountered, I was actually interviewed by a TV station over the summer about, in response to some young mother saying she's afraid to go out on the paths now because in reaction. So how do we educate about bear safety? Now, your garbage, refuse, and engineering and all that technical stuff, but the safety thing is hugely important. And do we need to do more in that? Does that fall in between the cracks? Is it a little bit of you and a little bit of corporate communications and a little bit of somebody else? I don't know. Like, do we need to do more there? Do you think? I think we do. And who would be responsible for that?
So through our urban wildlife program, which is in engineering, we are leading that, and we work very closely with corporate communications, in particular in parks as well. And one of the things coming out of this season that we're going to look at working on when things quiet down a little bit through the winter is we're going to revisit what our messaging is on just providing that basic messaging around safety and how to conduct yourself in a safe manner using city parks and our green spaces. And
so you won't be hibernating this winter, you think? Good. So one thing, I think people read things and get there's a real difference between how to react if you encounter a grizzly bear, which thank goodness we don't have grizzlies in this area, and a black bear. And I think there are some ideas that people might have that you need to kind of refute in terms of this is a black bear, you don't react this way to a black bear like you would react to a grizzly bear. We can go through the differences. You probably know them, or if you don't. But I think that's maybe something that can be part of the communications as well. Here's how you react to a black bear, very differently than grizzly bears. Okay. Do you agree with that?
I agree with that,
okay,
yes.
That's it.
Chris, and then Terry Toner.
What do we do with new residents that move in? So let's say I'm a new person in the community. I come from another country. My English is not very good, and I move into a house in Burke Mountain. What does the city do in that case to help educate?
Through the chair. So when you move in, and you would have an engagement with the city about issuing your new green cart and garbage cart. And when we issue that, we have a whole pile of documentation that goes with the cart, including the curbside collection calendar and our various related brochures. Some of those brochures are in language, multiple languages, or are currently being translated into multiple languages, but right now, all of that information has in, I think it's 3 to 5 different languages, a blurb saying this contains important information, please have it translated. So that would be the first, among the first direct interaction around garbage and wildlife. We participate in the Welcome to Coquitlam event, which draws in a lot of those new residents, and so we provide all of our communication again at that event. We encourage people to sign up for our Recollect app, which provides the constant reminders, and also we blast out information specifically related to garbage and bears through that, so that reaches people directly on their phones, etc. We also have a program in Coquitlam that we support, or that we're partnering on, called Empower Me, and the driver behind that is around energy conservation and fire safety, but as part of our arrangement in that program, we have included also a lot of our information on environmental issues, and in particular garbage and wildlife management. And what that program is that residents can actually elect to have peer-to-peer education and counseling, where they can call and make arrangements for free to have someone, say, who speaks Farsi and can come to the home and provide that one-on-one teaching and training about all of those issues. So, and then broader than that, people call, and we've got our language bank, and we have a variety of staff who speak all those languages, and we also reach out in our media, our different media chains, and those that reach those immigrant communities, our non-English speaking communities. We make sure that we get our advertising in those newspapers and publications as well.
You have a lot of presence at city events.
And yes, and we also attend all of the major city events, and any that we think may be even particular to certain immigrant communities. We make sure that we're at those events as well, and we have that one-on-one engagement.
Great. So, excellent information. I just wanted to confirm. So, I buy a new house, doesn't have a garbage can. I have to phone the city to get the garbage cans delivered initially. Is that correct?
You yourself, the new resident, don't necessarily call. There's a whole system in place there, and I don't want to be quoted on the details of it right now, but there's a system, and it triggers it, and that those bins will be delivered, or we will be engaged to make that contact to figure out the bin delivery. So who actually makes that first call, I can't tell you in this moment, but the engagement happens and the bins are delivered in time for the resident to move in.
So, but we don't know, we haven't spoken to the person then at that point, most likely.
We may or may not have.
I'm just thinking, okay, so I buy a house and I've got a manual for my fridge, my stove, my dishwasher, my furnace, my air conditioner, all these appliances that come with the house. I'm getting all this information about new blinds and all this stuff, and then I get this information about my garbage can. And first of all, I want to know how my appliances work best and that sort of thing. So I just wonder if we follow up with somebody 2 weeks after they move in with a phone call and just say, we're just following up to make sure you understand the process for putting out your garbage and that sort of thing. Maybe that would be a more effective way to try to make sure that people who are new to the area, new to our country, who may not know much about how to deal with theirs, maybe that's a way for them to really understand it. I know it's labor intensive, but we're saving money in our new garbage collection system, we're saving money in our recycling, and maybe we need to invest some of that money in a more thorough, comprehensive education process for new residents. I think everything we're doing for the existing residents is probably great, but if I'm a new resident, maybe we have to do a little bit more. And I think you do that once, and maybe that's a good return on your investment. I don't know. Just a thought.
Okay, thank you. Terry Towner.
I just want to finish off this discussion by saying thank you to you and your team. What a fantastic job you're doing. I don't know if you guys all knew, but I was the acting mayor when all this came about, and Mayor Stewart was out of town, and I think I did 13 or 14 media interactions with the newspaper and the radio and the TV, and if they kind of gave me an idea ahead of time what they wanted to talk about, you guys were extremely helpful, you and Vern, and I know you were on holidays, so I want to say thank you. But I also want to say that I've also received many phone calls, just because my face was out there, from other cities across Canada saying that they looked at our website and everything and thought it was fantastic, and they want to use some of what Coquitlam is doing as a model. So I just want to tell you there's lots of positive feedback, and I just want to say thank you so much for what you're doing. And I agree with, I was going to bring up what Councillor Wilson just said. I sent an email out a week or two ago when I was out walking my street, and there was some language barriers there. People with their garbage, their green waste out at 7 o'clock at night the night before, and they didn't understand what I was saying, and they were new, they're new houses. So maybe a follow-up. I was going to suggest perhaps the same thing. But I also just have another question. I'm getting slowed down now, but probably dozens of emails of neighbors now ratting out their neighbor because their green waste can is out the night before. Do you want to hear those? Are we going that route where, yeah, every time somebody sees their neighbor with their green waste out the night before, you want to hear about it?
We do want to hear about it. It's really important information for us. It helps us focus where we need to be. And the best way for people to actually be reporting that to the city would be to call our 604-927-3500 line, because it is monitored 24 hours a day, and we can provide a much more, a much quicker response when it's coming into our call center in that way.
Okay. I will do that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
To close out the discussion, I guess this has been a really good discussion. Thank you for all your work, and to Councillor Marston for bringing it up. I think the real estate community could help disperse pamphlets for you, because it's not just people that move into brand new houses, but other houses, second ownership houses, that we could probably do something saying it's a bear aware people. But it all comes down to common sense and personal responsibility. And we're always going to have those handful of people who really don't give a darn whether the bears live or die, or whether their neighbors get assaulted by a big furry friend or whatever. And those people deserve to be fined. So I'm not in favor at all of, not fining. But I think maybe it's time that the general public did rat out, as Councillor Towner said, those folks who just don't really care. So, we're done. Next item, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The second OB item concerns Metro Vancouver and their 2040 Regional Growth Strategy document, raised by Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you very much. Over the middle of August, we received communication from Metro Vancouver regarding the 5-year review of Metro Vancouver 2040, Shaping Our Future, the Regional Growth Strategy. And this was an important document that we refer to all the time at Council about the population growth that we foresee, the commitments that the city has made, 40,000 extra people, or no, that's not it. That's how many by 2040? How many? 90,000, right. The growth in Burke Mountain, the densification of the city centre in Burquitlam, all related to this. Not saying we wouldn't be doing this without this, but it's always related. And it seems to me that if there is some sort of review going on, that I'd like to know how staff is going to respond to this and how they're going to involve Council's feedback on this, if we have any thoughts on it. But it's a very important document, and I thought that we should get this out on the table here now. Could have raised this at the end of tonight's meeting because it's on the minutes of the agenda, but I thought it'd be better to raise it now. Anyway.
Maybe I'll start, and then Jim and Carl can add on to it. There will be a report that will come to Council. It will come in open. We are not planning, and the way we would characterize that report, it will be a housekeeping type report. When Metro had the original urban growth strategy, we took great exception to what we felt was an overreach of their responsibilities, and that entered into a very long and difficult process of challenging authorities. In hindsight, it was more difficult than we anticipated it would be. We thought there would be other communities that would also express concern. There were none. We did it alone. We didn't achieve anywhere near as much as we had hoped to, but one thing we did achieve was certainly over the review period, the 5-year review period. So we did achieve that, and that's this review period is coming up. We are not intending at the staff level to have any kind of fundamental issues with the document. I understand from Jim that no other municipality is planning any kind of fundamental discussion on whether or not there should or should not be such a document. It would be just fine tuning. So we see it as largely as a housekeeping kind of thing, and we are not planning to do anything more than that unless council directs us otherwise, from my perspective. But Jim is doing the report. I have not seen the report.
Just a quick comment. If there's going to be a report given to us, and if you're not planning to do much, we at least have then the time to weigh in, and we'll have several days to think about it and do our own research if we have to, or contact.
We'll do it before the deadline.
Okay, good.
And,
all right.
Thank you. McIntyre.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, a very, very timely question, because we do have the report in process. Metro Van's been busy over the last number of months peppering us with all sorts of questions and inquiries, and this is a key one. Carl is leading the charge on that with his staff. We are doing a report. I think it's on for September 19th council meeting coming up soon. It should be on the report tracking sheet. As the city manager said, having been around the block once with Metro on this plan, we're not anticipating taking really to task on this at this point. The question I asked of Carl and his team is, what are we hearing elsewhere? Like, for example, the Regional Planning Advisory Committee. Are there other municipalities or some of the staff that are raising concerns? And so far, we've heard not. So I think just about everyone wants just to get past this 5-year check-in, but we will prepare a report and bring that to council, and within the usual report cycle that council receives.
Can the report maybe clarify what import this Shaping Our Future has in terms, is it driving what we're doing? Is it complementing what we're doing? Is it following what we're doing here in Coquitlam? Is it obstructing, or is it if it can put that into context for us, that would help us as well. And we do hear public all the time about the fast rate of growth that we have here. So I want to be able to say with some more clarity about the policies that are supporting that growth or promoting it or whatever. So if we can have that bit of context, that would be good.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, you wanted to speak on this?
Well, only because, and Councillor Reid, of course, you recall, as does Councillor Asmussen, and the things that Pete just talked about. This is actually my committee at Metro Vancouver. I'm chair of regional planning, and so the committee has voiced its interest in has to actually because of its partly because of its agreement with Coquitlam. Coquitlam was the one that raised a number of issues, as Pete said. There was one other community that raised issues, Port Moody. It was those issues were allayed when they received commitments from Metro Vancouver, verbal commitments that didn't prove to be consistent with everyone's understanding, and so it became a conflict later. But we knew also that this would play out. One of our big questions at the time was we wanted Metro Vancouver to describe how a theoretical dispute between municipality and a metro would play out. We never actually got that. It's one of the things we didn't achieve, was this greater understanding of how a theoretical dispute would play out, but we did see it about a couple of years later when District of Township of Langley was sued, and ultimately the courts ruled that Metro Vancouver was being heavy-handed in its approach to various aspects of the case. It was then appealed because, of course, Metro had to win, but the appeal was lost as well, I think, wasn't it? In any case, the courts have sort of described a little bit better how a theoretical approach, theoretical dispute would play out, and so there are fewer questions now than there were when we asked the question. I don't see that Coquitlam has a lot of, as Pete just described, has a lot of reason to participate or to raise questions at this point about how it is unfolded. As for cause and effect, raised by Councillor O'Neill, I wouldn't suggest that this regional growth strategy is causing growth in any way. It certainly is a way of managing the growth that is caused by demand, and demand is ultimately the thing that causes population growth. But it also is tempered by the land constraints that are somewhat imposed by the regional growth strategies urban containment boundary. The constraint of land has become one of the significant elements in the rising prices in Metro Vancouver. So we're going to see us being, the regional growth strategy being blamed for either sprawl or for land price increases. And in this case, it has been land price increases. So.
Okay. Thank you. Well, I think we're going to get a report back from Mr. McIntyre, and we can have a really fulsome discussion at that time. Okay, next item, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Next item, OB3, concerns Tri-City News article, and it seeks clarification regarding Councillor Marsden and the KFN Enterprises, and was raised by Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to bring this up because back in mid-August there was an article in the Tri-City News about the Coquitlam First Nations Enterprise Board and the fact that Councillor Marsden was a member of that board. And the article mentioned that Councillor Marsden had not received any negative feedback or any feedback, positive or negative, on that appointment. And I just wanted to clarify because at that point in time, I don't think any of the councillors knew that Councillor Marsden was on the board. So just the article made it seem like we were sort of supportive of it, and we had no issues with it. And I just wanted to make sure that people understood that the reason there had been no feedback was because we didn't know about it at the time. So if the Tri-City News would like to put a little article in there saying that council didn't know about it at the time, that might clarify the situation.
Thank you. That's the end of the OB items, I believe. Oh,
it is, Madam Chair.
Sorry.
I have a comment on that.
Sorry, Councillor Zarrillo.
Thank you.
Didn't see any little arms flailing. So.
Sorry, I just wanted to mention it too because I did actually. I was surprised to see the comment. No feedback from Coquitlam Council and the community about this post, and I did have concerns. As a representative of the taxpayer, I was concerned for the city, and so I took the opportunity to do some due diligence myself and reach out to municipal legal counsel just to understand what this means. And I wanted to share that I have a number of reasons that I'm concerned about it, but certainly I don't have the jurisdiction to go at it on my own to understand what this means. I'd like to know what it means by their very nature. The city of Coquitlam and the Coquitlam First Nation enterprises potentially, not saying they do, have conflicting interests. And so the suggestion or advice that I received from council was that
from council?
From my legal was to ask our administration to refer this to an in-house review just so that we can have the whole air cleared, because unfortunately what happens is, in regards to the newspaper article even, is it kind of makes everyone on council involved, and I just would like to see that we can all just have it reviewed by our in-house legal and just have the whole air cleared on this one, because unfortunately I received contact over the summer, and I'd like to, I think it's our duty as the governing body for the city of Coquitlam to just have it done through
point of order.
Yes.
We obviously can't contemplate a motion or a direction or any kind of a discussion about whether or not we accept or seek legal advice on any matter in a public meeting. So I'm not. I think that discussion would have to take place, since it's a matter of seeking legal advice or purporting to seek legal advice. It would have to take place in a closed meeting.
I'm happy to do what folks ask. The legal counsel that I sought said that there is no property transaction, there's no staff involved, and the facts are all public knowledge. So that's just what I'm going to share with you.
Mr. Mayor.
Okay. I think we're talking about two different things. One, I think your motion was headed toward having council ask for a legal opinion about something, and that's something that has to be discussed in a closed meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly all of the facts, well, I don't know all of the facts. We don't know what we don't know. We just know the facts that have been presented in the public, and that's through an article in the newspaper. If we do want to pursue council seeking any discussion on this, that would have to be in a closed. The discussion about not legal issues but any other issues associated with this can be I suspect can be in open, and I look to the clerk for. I'm not trying to shut anything down here. I'm just trying.
No, I think any discussion that would seek a legal opinion from our in-house counsel or indeed our external counsel would be a matter of close, because it would be a legal opinion seeking this where the city's interests may intersect with the issue, and I think that is a matter for closed discussion under solicitor-client privilege, not on the nature of the transaction itself.
Okay, thank you. I think Councillor Wilson, I was taken aback because I was sitting enjoying my holiday and I went, what? I think everybody else did. We weren't consulted, so I think that's what, when people were calling me and I was going, you saw what? Was about my reply. Okay, are we done? No more questions? Done? Okay. Move for adjournment. Second, all in favor? Done. And do you want to recess before we go back to closed?
We would require a recess, yes. Just
how long?
5 minutes. Just let people stand up for a bit.
Just,
we don't
do we
need
have to stand?
Yes, it's mandatory. I won't stand for this.
Still stand at 7:30 in the morning.